Chapter 11 of the Life of Saint Teresa. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Anne Boulay. The Life of Saint Teresa by Teresa of Jesus, translated by the Reverend John Dalton. Chapter 11. She declares in what the fault consists of not loving God with perfection in a short time. This she begins to declare by a comparison, containing 4 degrees of prayer. In speaking then of those who begin to be servants of love, and it seems to me to be nothing else than to resolve to follow Him, who has loved us so much, I find it to be so great a dignity, that even the very thinking of it delights me in a particular manner. For servile fear goes away immediately, if we conduct ourselves as we ought in this first degree of prayer. O Lord of my soul, and my eternal good, how is it that when a soul is determined to love Thee, and to do what she can to leave all things, that so she may employ herself the better on this love of Thee, how is it Thou art not pleased that she should immediately rejoice in having attained this perfect love? But no, I ought to have said, it is of ourselves that we have reason to complain, because we do not desire it. All the fault is ours in not immediately enjoying this love with perfection. True love of God brings with it every blessing. But we are so fond of ourselves, and so slow in giving ourselves entirely to God, that as His Majesty on the one hand will not allow us to enjoy so precious a treasure without paying a great price for it, so on the other we must never omit disposing ourselves to receive it. I see clearly that there is nothing on this earth which can purchase so great a treasure, but if we did what we could to prevent ourselves from clinging to the things of this world, and if all our care and conversation were directed to heaven, I am confident that very speedily this blessing would be given to us, if we quickly and entirely were to dispose ourselves to receive it, as some saints have done. But the truth is, we think we give all to God, whereas we offer Him only the rent, or fruits. Keeping in the meantime the roots, and possession of the land ourselves, we resolve to be poor, and this is great merit. But often do we employ all our care and diligence in seeing that we want nothing, not only of what is necessary, but of what is even superfluous. And we are also careful to meet with friends who will procure these things for us, and thus we expose ourselves to greater trouble, and perhaps greater danger, than we were in before, when we had possession of our own estates, and all that nothing may be wanting to us. It seems also that in becoming religious, or when we begin to lead a spiritual life, and to follow perfection, we care not for the honor of this world, and yet, as soon as ever our honor is in any degree touched, we forget that we gave it all to God, and we wish to snatch it from the hands of God, as they say, and so run away with it, even after we had freely made Him Lord of it, as we thought. And this is the case in all other things. This is an odd way of seeking the love of God, to desire to possess it entirely, and as it were in handfuls, and yet still to retain our old affections, and not endeavor to fulfill our good desires, nor wish to raise them from the earth, though we expect to enjoy many spiritual consolations at the same time. But these 2 extremes cannot well agree, nor is there, in my opinion, any relation between them, and therefore, because we do not at once give ourselves up entirely to God, this treasure is not entirely given to us. May His Majesty, however, be pleased to bestow it upon us, were it only drop by drop, and though it should cost us all possible labors. God grants a very great mercy to that person whom He endows with grace and courage to resolve on procuring, with all his strength, this blessing, because, if he perseveres, our Lord will not deny it to him, and by degrees He will be giving him courage to gain this victory. I mention courage as necessary, because in the beginning the devil represents many difficulties, in order that we may not commence the good path effectually, as one who knows the injury he will receive, not only by losing that one soul, but many others also. If he who has begun to serve God endeavors, by the divine assistance, to arrive at the height of perfection, I believe such a one will never go alone to heaven, but he will bring many others with him. And God will give these to him as to a valiant captain, that they may march under his guidance. Hence, as the devil will put many dangers and difficulties in the way, great courage is necessary, as well as very many graces from God, in order not to turn back. I will now speak of the manner in which those ought to commence who are determined to go in search of this blessing, and to succeed in this enterprise. I shall treat afterwards on what I have already begun to speak about, viz., mystical theology, as I think it is called. The greatest trouble comes in the beginning, for those who give their whole substance to God are the persons who suffer. But in the other degrees of prayer there is more enjoyment, though all three have their crosses in different ways. All those, however, who wish to follow Christ must walk along the way he went, unless they wish to be lost. And happy trials these are which even in this life are so superabundantly repaid. I will now make use of some comparisons, which yet I would be glad not to mention, because I am a woman, and I would wish also to relate simply what my superiors command me. But this language of the soul is so difficult to be expressed by ignorant persons like myself, that I must discover some method of explaining it. It may happen that seldom I shall have the good fortune to give a proper comparison, and in this case your reverence will be amused at seeing my stupidity. It seems to me that I have either read or heard the following comparison, though as I have such a bad memory, I know not where or how I first met with it, but it will serve my purpose for the present. He then who commences prayer should imagine that he is beginning to make a garden, for the delight of his Lord, in some very unfruitful soil, full of weeds. His Majesty must be asked to pull up the bad plants, and put good ones in their place. But we will suppose this is already done, when a soul has not only determined, but is resolved to make use of mental prayer. And now, by God's help, we must endeavor, like good gardeners, to make these plants grow, and we should take care to water them, that so they may not wither, but bring forth flowers of such sweet fragrance as may please our Lord, and then he may take pleasure in often coming into this garden, and delighting himself with our virtues. Let us see then in what way these flowers may be watered, that so we may understand what we have to do, and what trouble it will cost us, whether it will be greater than the gain, and how long it will last. It seems to me that these plants may be watered in 4 different ways. 1. By drawing water out of a well, and this cannot be done without much labor. 2. By using a wheel with buckets attached to it, and this can easily be turned by the hand. Sometimes I have in this way drawn water myself, and I found it was less troublesome, and drew more than by the former method. 3. By letting some small stream run into the garden, and by this means it will be watered much better than by the preceding method, and the earth will have more moisture, and there will be no necessity to water the ground so often. The labor of the gardener also will be much less. 4. By a good shower of rain falling, for then our Lord himself waters the garden, without any labor on our part, and this is, without comparison, by far the best method of all I have mentioned. And now let us apply these 4 ways of watering, whereby this garden is to be kept in good order, because without water a garden will perish. This comparison, which suits my purpose, may serve to explain in some measure the 4 degrees of prayer, to which our Lord in his goodness has sometimes raised my soul. And may it please his Majesty, that I may speak correctly, and in such a way as to profit one of those persons who have commanded me to write this account, and whom our Lord has advanced further in 4 months, than I was ever able to advance in 17 years. But he disposed himself better than I did, and hence his garden was watered in these 4 ways, without any trouble on his part, though the last of these was given to him only by drops. But he advances so rapidly, that by the assistance of our Lord, he will very soon be engulfed in it, and I should be glad were he to laugh at me, in case he finds my method of expressing these things to be very foolish. We may say that those who begin to use mental prayer are the persons who draw the water out of the well, and that this work is very troublesome, as I have mentioned above. They grow weary in recollecting their senses, which, as they were accustomed to wander about, are difficult to keep in order. These persons